Hi everyone, this is Fred. Today's tutorial is about isometric drawing. So the first thing is some quick reminder about what is isometric drawing. Isometric is part of a perspective drawing. There is two kind of perspective, two big kind that include subcategories. The two kind are the linear or conical perspective, and the second one is what we call the parallel perspectives. So linear is what you can see here. Some example is a way to try to mimic the human vision, okay, to represent things the way human perception does. So you can have the most used version, which are the 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective, which is a little bit less used. All these perspective depends on the position of the viewer in front of the object it's looking at, it's watching. So what you can see here is the horizon line, which is the eye level, the eye of the level of the observer. So all this view depends on the relation between the viewer and the object. Depends on angle, height, and also the distance between the viewer and the object which is observed. So this is a way to represent things, but there is another way in perspective which is a little bit different. It's what we call parallel perspective, or in some cases axonometrics. Axonometric perspective, axonometric drawing are different because, as you can see, you have different kind here, not all, it's not exhaustive, but you can have different kind here. They are parallel, means that there is no change of the size of the object, whatever is on the foreground or the background, whatever its position in depth, it's not realistic, it's not close to the human vision, but the purpose is different. Most of the time this is something that is used for technical reason or didactic reason, when you want to explain something, when you want to show something like architecture or design drawing, for mass production industry or something like that. So this is the use of this kind of perspective. So it's more a technical drawing, but in some cases, especially for the isometric drawing, can be used for illustration. It has multiple advantages, we'll see them. So here, three different kind of axonometric perspective, and as you can see, it's the angle, the different angle. So why there is so many different? Actually, it's because on this kind of technical drawing, the purpose of each of this drawing is to focus, to emphasize on one side, one part of the object that you want to show. For instance, the first one, which can be, it depends on the ratio of here, of the depth, but it can be called the cabinet or the cavalier. So you can see that this one is really focusing on the front view of the object, okay? You show some depth, you show some volume, but actually this is this part which is more important. This one is called the military. It's based on a map. You can see a map, square angle here, that you just rotate 45 degrees. So it really emphasizes on the top view. It's really focused on the top view, and the rest is just some vertical lines which are drawn to show some height and some volume, some extrusion. But this is the main view. Isometric is interesting because, like its name is called, iso means equal. It has three equal angles, 120 degrees each. So it means it's quite regular, and it shows the different side with the same importance. So it's quite neutral, standard, and interesting. So this is something which is used commonly for drawing, but also recently in illustration, especially since we are drawing with computers, because we have a lot of help. Here it's of course a VectorStyler that I use, but some other software have also some features that help to create isometric drawing. So this is what is interesting for us today. So Isometric drawing, like we just said, you have this view of 3 equal angles, and you can have the different view can be from below, from above, and left and right. Like the others, axonometric drawings, the good point is everything is parallel. There is no change on the shape, and the front and the back are the same size, which means that it's very interesting. We'll see later for if you want to create a library. You can also use very easily the mirror. In that case, you can see that my chair actually is just the same chair, exactly the same chair. Just mirror it with a mirror tool, which is here. And so it's very practical, very convenient. So it's very interesting. So the pros and cons of the isometric, well, let's say, as you can see here, you can make something very clear. You don't have to understand the principles of converging lines or a horizon line. And also it's very interesting in terms of information, because all information are evenly displayed. For instance, you can see here I have my little plant, and I have a copy of the same plant which is here, and she has the same size. They are visible the same way. Everything is clear. If I want to understand this space, I understand the space here. I understand this image. There is no distortion. There is no size that diminished when the object become remoted. So it's very interesting. So that means also that you can move. Like you see here, for instance, you can move the object, and you don't have to make them change in their size. You just move them like some toys you play with. The only thing you have to care for is the position of the object in the layer stack. The layer stack, as you can see here, I'm on the top, so I'm covering this object. I just want to make it going actually to be hidden by the first furniture. So what I just need is to go okay, and I just move the object from the layer stack, and now it's hidden by the other object. Okay, so it's very easy to build some scene like this, and also to modify them. You don't have to modify the object every time you move them, which can be really demanding when you work with a linear perspective. So this is very interesting, but there is also the fact that it's always the same angle. So this angle is very interesting for objective information, or something like you want to give something non-realistic and cute, but sometimes you want something more dynamic, more dramatic, like here. And so in that case, you prefer to have a linear perspective, so you can have some lines more dynamic. You have something like more intense. This is a different use. Of course, this is a different use, but it's something you cannot have. So when you use isometric, think about it's a different way of seeing things. Both of this perspective, they show some space. They create some space on a flat surface, which is our computer, or it can be a paper sheet or a canvas. But the idea is, in the end, you use them for different purposes. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, so now we are going to do a drawing. We go to File, we open a new document. Okay, so what we will need is to create a grid, isometric grid, according to the settings of the isometric 120 degree angle. So first we have to be sure that on view the snapping is enabled. Okay, then you go to guides. You will have to show the grid. Your grid has to be visible, and you have to snap to grid. Okay, this is how you will snap later when it's time to draw. Once this is done, you have to create your grid. You go to Panels, Editing, Grid. Okay, so the grid panel will open. Maybe it won't open at the same place on your screen, but it will appear anyway. And we need some specific settings, so we go to the burger menu, Edit Grid. So now we have a grid editor, more specific one. So what you will set is the horizontal line. You see it appears on the background here, and you set it at 120 degree. Okay, this is what we want. This is the isometric rules. You put a second horizontal line, okay, and this one you put minus 120, okay, and you can see it up here. So if you don't see two grid like this, you just need to put add grid and it will add some values. Okay, so in that case I put a space of 10 millimeters. You can put it 5, it's up to you actually. If you don't want your drawing to be too confusing, maybe don't make an isometric grid which is too narrow. Since we know that the proportions don't change in the object, you can make a big object using all the count of grid square you need, and then you reduce it. So that's why you don't need to have a super precise isometric all the time. In some cases, I will add a grid, a vertical one. There is no obligation about that, but it can be useful in some cases, and you see. But some other cases you can find it a little bit too confusing on your drawing, so it's up to you. It's not necessary. You have to set also this angle here at 90 degree. You have to check that it's okay. Once you have done that, you will save the preset, of course, and you can call it isometric. Okay. And if you need, you can find it back. You can make Cavalier dimetric, whatever you have seen previously, different parallel perspective. Okay, so now you can just close this, yeah, and you get more space. Now we are ready to draw. Before, maybe a quick reminder, you have to be sure in your preferences, in your preference settings, in editing option 1, the angle constraint here is preferably on 30 degree. Usually we have an angle constraint of 45 degree. Of course you want 45, 90, etc. But in that case it would be more convenient for us to have 30 degree angles. Okay, so it will help you. But usually also the snapping, the grid snapping can be enough. You will see. Okay. Okay, now we have a grid. It's time to draw. There are two main ways to draw in isometric. One is to simply use the pen tool, like I'm doing now, and to snap to the grid. So you just draw according to the grid. And you can have your shape quite quickly done. So the good point is very useful since you follow a grid and angles. So all the square angle shapes or T shapes, L shapes, boxes, cubes, it's very easy and very fast to do it this way. Once you have this shape, you want to give it some depth. So what you will do is just creating the other shape. You try to give it some other, and you use the shape editor and you just move the node and you choose how deep you want to go. Okay, what is very interesting with that is, like we said previously with the parallel perspective, what happened here is I will duplicate by pressing Alt and dragging. This square is the same size as this one, because in this isometric rules you don't need to have a difference of size if things are on the background. There is no reduction when things get remoted. So this is very interesting because you can of course duplicate very easily. You can create libraries very easily. Once you have a bunch of very simple shapes, you just need to associate them. It's like a construction kit, like some toys. So it's very interesting. So in that case I use this one and I put it here, and then I can just duplicate it, make it a little bit in between in value, and up I will snap it. Once I have this, like I did previously, just Alt and drag, and I just put at the right place. Okay, so the second way is to take some flat shapes and make another L. This one is thinner, but it's okay, you understand the principle. Okay, to take this shape and to make it fit the grid. So for that I go to transform, and the transform panel I have two functions that are interesting. It's the skewing options. It can be horizontal or vertical skewing, and the rotation. And using these two functions I will make my L shape fit the grid. So horizontal skewing, I put my value, and rotation. And as you can see, this L shape is now following the grid. So it can be a waste of time if you're very familiar with the pen tool and if you know how to use the pen tool. For square angle shapes like boxes, T-shapes, etc. it's not necessary, but it can be interesting if you talk about complex shapes like a star or some text. If you want to put some text, let's say you want to make like a house or it's a shop and you want to put some text in isometry, so you have to use this method. So for instance, we draw a star, and if you want to draw a star following this grid, it will be complicated and not very easy. You're not sure about the result, so the transform is a good way. Okay, and now we have a star that follows the isometric grid. Okay, so now you know how to make an object fit the grid. So in some cases you want this object to fit the top, to fit the left, or to fit the right, so you need some different values. So I put it here, some example that you can see. I've got my original flat shape here, the gray one, and you can see, depending on the settings I use for the rotation and horizontal skewing, the different combination with positive and negative values, I can have different results. And of course, depending on my need, I will use some of these settings. So you can watch these settings and use them. You can have your own settings. Like I said before, if you use vertical skewing instead of horizontal skewing, it works fine too, just different settings. But this one works fine to me, so I keep them and you can have a look. So there is one shape which is a little bit specific. It's the circle. When you have a circle and you are inside the isometric grid, it becomes an ellipse. But the thing is, if you just take a circle, normal circle, and you apply the transformation, skewing and rotation, you can have some a little bit slight distortion. And it happens in several softwares I have already tried. So for me, the most the easiest way is to, like, it's something that actually we will see maybe later about the linear perspective. A lot of rules that apply to 2D geometry also apply to 3D, whatever is a linear perspective or isometric. So when you got a square, you can make a circle that fits the square, whatever is inside or outside. Inside, like here, but it can also be outside. Oh, sorry, I'm currently matching the grid a little bit too much. Okay, because of the snapping. Okay, so you can see that inside or outside. So this is this that we will apply to have a nice and simple circle, and the point is, of course, to use it again. I was mentioning libraries before, to use it again. So this is a square, and what you do is you build your ellipse according to this square. The measurement has to be this square. And now you know that you have the ellipse you need. You know what is for around. This ellipse, of course, you can just duplicate it, and we give it a rotation of 120 degree or minus 120 degree. And this will give you the circle you need. The reason I don't use the mirror in that case can be surprising, because I could have taken this one and mirror it. It's just because if you do that, VectorStyler will just put the settings of the transform tool at 0, the angle. In that case, I keep my 120 here, or minus 120, or my 120 here. If I took one of these and I duplicate it, it will just put it, set it back to 0. So sometimes it can be useful to keep it. The good thing is that once you have these, you just keep them. You keep them, they have your reference point, and like I said, you can build a library with that. So this is the circle. I prefer circle like this than the circle, a full circle that you turn using, like I did for this star. You turn using the transform and skewing tools. The result is maybe a little bit clumsy. Okay, now that we know how to build some basic shapes, you can build what we call a library. Means you can make a lot of objects, and then you can reuse them in different situations, different illustration. You can make some variations starting from one, and you make some copies and with different colors, etc. You can, and especially if you're fond of this kind of illustration and you use a lot, you can create your own library, like trees, houses, building, furniture, and you can just combine them in different ways, and it's very fast actually to create some volume 3D illustration. So like we said, which is very interesting, is whatever this chair is here, means close to the desk or further, you don't need to change its size. So it's very, very easy. So you can just play. It's really like a construction game. So the difference, the only thing you have to care about is the depth, this effect of depth. Like we said, the top of your artboard is considered as the background, and the bottom of your artboard is the foreground. So when you build things, it's better to start from there, and every time you copy or place another object, it will be above in the layer stack, and means also it will be visible, and it will hide the one which is under him. So it means this is how you will create your space, and you don't have to think too much. You see, my chair is hidden by the desk. In the case of this chair, which is interesting, everything works fine, but what happens if I want to make it a little bit more plausible, like it is under the desk? The problem I have is if it's on the foreground, it will hide the desk, and if the desk is on the foreground, it will hide partly the seat. So the problem is how to solve it. So that's when you use a clipping shape. Here I put it in red. Of course you don't put it in red, you just create this shape as a container. You take your chair from the library, you copy and you paste inside the container, and all the parts which are common to both, means in that case the red part, they will be visible, and everything from the chair which is outside of the container won't be visible. And in that case, what I can do is using it to make something which is partly hidden but not totally. And the good thing is I don't have to create a second chair, and I can use the chair from the library. I just need to create this container and put it inside. And I can also make this half-cut chair an object from the library itself. So it's very, very convenient. Okay, so what we can do now. I was talking about library, how we do that. Here I have a group, okay? I just make a desk and I make my two chairs. I have a group, which is selected, and what I want is to create some symbol. I go to Panels, Styles, and Symbols. I have this panel, and what I do, I simply select my desk and I press the plus here, and I will create the symbol. Name is desk. Yes, yeah, it's a good name. So now what I have is symbol. Symbol is an object which is copied. It can be copied, but you still keep a link with the original. Like you multiply it, and if you change the parent or the child, means all the copies will change accordingly, which is very convenient. In that case also, it can be used to reproduce, duplicate a lot of shape like we do here. So you can have this, and you will use the symbol stamp tool, and every time you press, there is a new desk. But like I said before, you see this one is covering this one. It's better to start from the top view, and going down. Because by doing this, you know that the last shape you do there will be on the foreground. And you see, you create a classroom in a matter of seconds. So the symbols are very powerful tools. That's not the topic of this tutorial, but I think it can be useful to know that. And the isometric style is very relevant in that case. And it can be very, very time saving. When you have some free time, you just build your libraries and you make them little by little. One day you have some free time, okay, let's make a couple of trees, let's make some walls with brick pattern or whatever, and you can do this. And then one day when you have to do some illustration, and you can easily use all the object you already have ready-made, and you save a lot of time. And like I said, you can also make some variation. Starting from one, you make one style of chair, but so once you have built, because it can take some time, once you have built the feet, the seat, etc., you can just duplicate it, just change one color, just add one features, making a hole or something like that, and it's very convenient. Okay, so now it's time for the conclusion for today. I hope you learned something about isometric drawing. There will be some further tutorials about how to use the shades, how to use the pattern, like you can see here, or the noise. And there will be some application on a project. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.